The recent chance discovery of these long-forgotten colour films shot in South America in 1939 led to the unravelling of an extraordinary tale of political intrigue, bravery and hope.
I was cleaning out a cedar closet, and in the cedar closet were 3 rolls of 16mm film. And I asked my father what was in these films, and he said, "Oh, they're just Uncle Dave's films." He flew over a variety of countries, and it was mostly, footage out the window from the plane, nothing really very good in it. So I kind of picked up one and put it to the light, and I could see some people. It was that first scene of the Pan Am plane being refueled in Trinidad, and it's just these vibrant blues and reds. And that's the thing that first, it just kind of shocked me that the quality of the film was that good, and it was a wonderful thing to see.
What looked like just ordinary home movies of a trip to South America turned out to be something much more significant. These films would testify to one man's extraordinary humanitarian journey. That man was David Glick, a Jewish-American lawyer who helped thousands of Jews flee Nazi Germany and find a safe haven in South America. But like his films, which lay undiscovered for decades, his story is one that has never been fully told.
He was the type of person that would rarely speak of himself or his exploits. I always wanted to learn more about what he did, so I started slowly to put together this puzzle.
Alan Hepner's search led him to the archives of the Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, the leading humanitarian organization in New York. They urgently needed someone to negotiate with the Nazis to help Jews get out of Germany. As an experienced lawyer, Glick, they decided, was their man. In April 1936, he arrived in Berlin and embarked on his mission.
By going, he undertook a tremendous amount of personal risk. This was a time where every shop front had signs saying the Jews weren't welcome. Swastikas were flying, brown shirts were walking the streets. They could really not guarantee his safety. So I think that was the first and probably the most paramount point that was made to him, that he would go independently and he would go understanding the tremendous risk that he would face.
As a Jew in Germany, Glick knew he would need official approval to travel around the country without falling victim to the thuggery of the Nazis. On arrival in Berlin, he immediately made his way to the Gestapo headquarters, where he'd been granted an audience with the man who would become one of the chief architects of the Holocaust, Heinrich Himmler.
When he first walked in, there was actually a sign in German that said Jews were not admitted. So he had to feel quite a bit of apprehension and concern about what he would be able to do.
The meeting between these two adversaries was tense but cordial. And Glick even managed to get one up on Himmler.
He did not conceal the fact that he was Jewish. He concealed the fact that he spoke German. That way he could hear what the back chatter was about him and about the mission.
Himmler proved to be very accommodating. Glick got his papers and, should he ever need further assistance, was even furnished with the private calling card of Karl Hasselbacher, the deputy in charge of what the Nazis called the Jewish problem. Armed with all the necessary papers, Glick set off on his mission. For the next 2 years, between April 1936 and June 1938, he crisscrossed Germany, visiting Jewish communities in as many cities, towns and villages as he could reach. The situation facing them was even worse than he'd feared, as he reported back to the JDC.
In the town of Gladenbach, where there are now 23 Jews, a real pogrom was staged, and they were so severely beaten up that they ran into the woods and remained there for several days. Homes were destroyed and flooded by turning on the water on the top floors. The Jews returned, and later on the villagers, wearing masks, again attacked them physically.
This letter descends into quite a bit of darkness. It's somewhat of a cry of despair, explaining what was happening to these people, the dire conditions that even he didn't know about.
Glick now knew that time was running out and that he had to act fast to persuade as many Jews as possible to escape the Nazi menace.
I think his mission was to explain to people, not that they needed any explaining how bad the situation was, but that they had an alternative at that time. Because as you can imagine, many people at the time felt that things would get better, not worse. And his, I'm sure, difficult conversations with people was to try and talk to them and present to them another option.
Their promised land turned out to be not Palestine, but South America. This is where Glick's refugees were to make new lives for themselves. And in 1939, Glick travelled there to report on how they were settling into their new homelands. These are the extraordinary films that his great-nephew Alan Hepner had discovered 60 years later.
He undertook a very arduous 4-month excursion to all of the capital cities in South America to meet with some government personnel to see whether or not they could increase the quotas, the number of Jews that they would accept. And I'm sure it was a very emotional mission for him to actually meet up again with those people that he had helped save.
Escaping Nazi Germany, with all the personal sacrifice that entailed, was only one part of what these refugees had to endure. They had escaped the death camps and were free of persecution, but now they faced a new challenge.
Try to picture these men, women, and children who had been living in the most modern scientific country in the world, with all the physical comforts of modern science, suddenly faced with the difficulties of a pioneer life in a country as strange to them as planet Mars.
Some of the films you can actually see in what is quite a Hispanic country. There all of a sudden be these extraordinarily white, chubby faces, slowly acclimating into what many would call third world surroundings, in high heat, with very little support, oftentimes very little food, living a very, very difficult life. So it must have been just as night and day as one can imagine.
Despite these hardships, these refugees were the lucky ones. They had been given the chance of starting a new life. There was hope.
While he was in Germany, 90,000 German Jews were able to transport out of the country. The precise numbers of people that he actually worked with and helped emigrate I think will always be unknown. But my feeling is that if he was not there, if this independent go-between never was, that thousands of more Germans would have met the fate that so many other millions met.
But for Glick, the reunion with those he'd saved from sure death was bittersweet.
He always felt quite a bit of sorrow and sadness thinking about the people that he actually could not help. People that he couldn't convince to leave, people that refused to leave. Many of the families, brothers, fathers, sisters that he met with didn't make it out of the country and died. And he wished that he had done more.
These colour films are a unique and revealing record on what is a little-known aspect of the mass Jewish emigration experience of the 30s. But their value goes far beyond that. They also provide the final missing chapter in the story of a man whose courage and determination saved thousands.